Hello, I'm John Gravino. I'm the author of The Immoral Landscape of the New Atheism. Welcome to the new Walden Book Club. Today we're talking about the new book by Eric Metaxas. It's called If You Can Keep It, The Forgotten Promise of American Liberty. And our focus of the discussion today is going to be on the introduction. In the introduction, Metaxas is primarily concerned to explain to us where he got the idea for the title of the book, and in the process of doing that, he introduces us to the big ideas in his book. According to Metaxas, the title of his book has two main sources. The main title, If You Can Keep It, comes from a story about Benjamin Franklin as the Constitutional Convention was coming to a close. He describes that for us on page 9. Apparently, it's a true story, and we know about it because one of the delegates from the Constitutional Convention overheard this conversation between Benjamin Franklin and a certain woman, Mrs. Powell is her name. Apparently she was a resident of Philadelphia and happened to be loitering outside Independence Hall as the convention was coming to an end. So let me read to you Eric's account here. Oh, and by the way, the person who tells us the story, the name of the delegate was Dr. James McHenry. So here it goes. According to McHenry, Mrs. Powell put her question to Franklin directly. Well, doctor, she asked him, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy? Franklin, who was rarely short of words or wit, shot back, a republic, madam, if you can keep it. And there it was. But what exactly did Franklin mean by that? Well, I think it's pretty clear what Franklin meant. He meant that a republic is not an easy thing to keep, that the blessings of freedom and representative government and equality are fragile and can easily be lost. And in fact, Metaxas, in the introduction, goes to great lengths to explain that to us, how the fact of American representative government was really an experiment. It wasn't standard operating procedure for the way governments worked at the time, or at any time. Certainly there were some exceptions in ancient history, but even Metaxas points out that they were exceptions, and they really don't measure up to our standard of democracy here in the United States. So the question that Metaxas is asking is whether we've forgotten this wisdom of Benjamin Franklin, that we cannot take our democracy for granted. This is Metaxas's question to us. Do we take our government for granted? Do we just assume that we're always going to have the blessings of freedom and democracy? And that leads us to the subtitle, The Forgotten Promise of American Liberty. He says, Metaxas does, that he got the idea for the subtitle from Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, and he explains that to us on page 3. In his famous I Have a Dream speech, Martin Luther King Jr. said that the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence before it constituted a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. It was a promise that was not fulfilled instantly, and that was not fulfilled in King's day, and that is not yet fulfilled in ours, at least not in full. It is a promise that is being fulfilled and that must keep on being fulfilled, and we are the ones who must fulfill it, who must keep the promise. But what is required of us to keep that promise and to continue to fulfill it? What is required of us, of each one of us who are we the people, is something we have mostly forgotten. That is the reason I am writing this book. Okay, so Metaxas is telling us that we have forgotten the promise of American liberty, and that's the reason why he wrote the book, to remind us of our duties and obligations to keep our republic going. Now, how is it that we keep the promise? Well, as I already said, Metaxas thinks we've forgotten how to do that, but he does hint at his answer to the question on page 4. And so this is Eric Metaxas' project. He is going to, in this book, remind us of the necessary requirements for keeping our representative government alive, keeping it going. And so here's what he says on page 4. It is not enough for us merely to exist as a people, doing the minimum of simply obeying our laws and minding our own business. Much more is required of Americans if America is truly to be America. In Dickens's A Christmas Carol, when Marley's ghost confronts Scrooge, Scrooge wonders at Marley's chains. What has his old business partner done to deserve such punishment? But you're always a good man of business, Jacob, Scrooge says, to which Marley gives a forceful response. Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. Marley's bracing words might well suffice to sum up our situation as a nation. We cannot pretend that it's sufficient for us to mind our own business. The founders understood that the republic that came into being in 1787 could not continue long if every American did not make the business of that republic his or her business. And so this seems to be what Metaxas is telling us. This is what we've forgotten. We have forgotten that liberty, as conceived in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, isn't liberty for me, it's liberty for everybody. It's liberty for all people. And he's saying that this is what we've forgotten. We've forgotten about the common good. We've forgotten about common welfare. And he also describes in the introduction how the Statue of Liberty is in some respects an icon for this commitment to universal liberty, universal freedom. And his point is that Lady Liberty is not facing us. She's not facing the United States. She's facing outward to all the other nations. And his point is that that really represents our concern for the liberty of all people, not just our own liberty. And so he's saying that, oh, and by the way, let me show you, take a close look at the cover there. You'll see that Lady Liberty is sitting right there on the cover, but if you can tell, there, take a look at that. You can see that her image is fading. And so Metaxas is making the point that this idea that she represents of universal liberty, of liberty for all, is fading from our country. But also, if you noticed, the torch, however, is still in focus. At the end of the introduction, Metaxas talks about the flame of ordered liberty, and his worry is that that is going to go out. And in fact, I believe he even says that he's worried that it's going to go out even in our own generation. But you can see from the image that it's the only image left of the Statue of Liberty that is still in focus. And so while Metaxas tells us that he's worried that the flame of ordered liberty is going to go out, it hasn't gone out yet. So there's still hope, according to Metaxas. Now, this idea that we've forgotten about the common good, we've forgotten about the necessary requirements for running our government, this is a major theme of his book, or so it appears at least. In my reading of the introduction, and I've gotten a little bit into chapter 1 as well, I think I've counted about 6 references to this idea that we've forgotten important things about our republic. So it appears that it's going to be a major theme, and we'll probably be continuing to discuss it as we discuss the book. And so let's start talking about it right now. It's an important theme of his book. It's in the title of his book. So let's ponder for a moment what the significance of this forgetting really is. Metaxas is essentially telling us that we no longer know how to be citizens of a republic. He seems to be telling us that we've forgotten how to be American. And this cannot be good news. Obviously, our country, for a long time now, our country has been the most powerful, the richest country in the world. Clearly, we've done some things wrong, but we've also clearly, by our successes, it's very clear that we've also done a lot that is right. And to be saying that we no longer know how to run our government is really to be saying that we've lost some know-how, that our ancestors knew how to do some things better than we know how to do. And this idea does not seem to be compatible with the idea that somehow today we are living in a golden age of enlightenment and reason. Enlightenment is associated with the advancement of knowledge and wisdom, but by Metaxas telling us that we have forgotten how to run our republic, he seems to be associating our age not with an age of enlightenment or progress, but rather with an age of darkness. Knowledge is not being advanced, it's actually in retreat. So ours is an age of darkness, not enlightenment. Ours is an age of decline, not an age of progress. A rather negative idea there, a rather negative theme, but nevertheless one that is very widespread in our culture, and it's been around actually for quite some time. Now there are exceptions. Not everyone thinks that America is in decline. Not everyone is pessimistic, and I'm thinking actually of the Harvard professor Steven Pinker and his book, The Better Angels of Our Nature. He seems to be quite the optimist, and he does have some fans out there. I just noticed on Twitter that Bill Gates is highly recommending Steven Pinker's book, and so the two of them seem to belong to the club of optimism, the everything is awesome. And of course, you know, if you're Bill Gates and you're the richest man in the world, I suppose you have good reason to think that indeed everything is awesome. However, there are a lot of people out there who agree with Metaxas that ours really is an age of decline. Try Googling it sometime and you'll see how many hits you get. Lots of people out there share this concern that Metaxas has. This idea has been around for a while, as I said. You can go back to the 60s and 70s, and the writings of Philip Rieff certainly come to mind. When I was in college, there was a book that really was widely discussed. It was by Alan Bloom. It was called The Closing of the American Mind. I went out and grabbed a copy of the book, and I paid very close attention to all the debates and discussions about that book. So this idea that we've been in decline has been around for quite some time. And as our discussion of Eric's book continues, maybe we will have occasion to go back and visit some of Philip Rieff's ideas or Alan Bloom's ideas. But there are many voices today who are echoing this concern, and for now, we are going to concentrate on these new voices who are warning us about an American decline. And one very important voice in this debate comes from the school of New Atheism. This group of people does seem to think that we are in decline or in danger of decline. And if you're familiar with their ideas at all, what you know is that their blame for this decline is placed squarely on the shoulders of religion. In the words of Christopher Hitchens, religion poisons everything. So how is it that religion poisons everything? Well, they're very clear that the evil, one of the many evils of religion, according to them, is that it keeps us from being fully rational. Religion is filled with superstitions and all kinds of myths and unverifiable and ridiculous ideas that require us to violate the laws of physics and the universe. And how can modern people be so foolish and ridiculous as that? Sam Harris is certainly one of these people who makes this kind of an argument. He seems to think that the key to our enlightenment, the key to progress, is to lose the religion. If only America could be more like the other Western democracies and fully embrace secularization, then we would enjoy the fruits of this secular enlightenment and liberation, and truly we would be in a golden age. So for the New Atheists, the golden age is identical to an age of secularization. It's a world without religion. Can you imagine that? A very, very negative view of the role of religion in society. And so the new atheists are raising the question, what is the role of religion in our society? Does religion have a positive role to play or doesn't it? Metaxas clearly is going to weigh in on this question in a big way in this book, and I think that's very clear from pages 10 and 11 of the introduction. Let me share that with you. So here on these pages, Metaxas cites 3 reasons why he thinks that the American colonies were ripe for this experiment in republican government and representative government, what he calls self-government. And listen to what these reasons are. So the first reason is that we were the heirs of British law, and he specifically mentions the Magna Carta. His second reason was, and I'm quoting here, the colonists' abiding respect for religious freedom. And the third reason, let me go ahead and I'll read to you his third reason here. And finally, because of their general religiousness, many of them had a fealty to their faith communities that made them already likely to be governing themselves in ways that made the reigning governmental authority redundant. Thus, they were uniquely prepared for this responsibility of self-government. And the founders could dream of entrusting it to them and did entrust it to them. So Metaxas cites 3 reasons why he believes that the colonies were ready for this experiment in self-government, and 2 of the reasons are explicitly religious. I would even go so far as to say that his first reason about being the heirs of British law is also religious, because he cites the Magna Carta, and in researching my own book, I came across several accounts of the Magna Carta, and all of the accounts give some measure of credit to the Archbishop of Canterbury at the time. So some accounts say that he wrote it outright. Other accounts say that he was very influential. So anyway, any way you look at it, Metaxas has basically, he's given us 3 reasons why self-government why the colonists were ready for self-government. 2 of his 3 reasons were explicitly religious. So it seems to be clear that Metaxas is disagreeing with the new atheists about the role that religion has to play in society. Metaxas seems to be saying that religion, in fact, has a positive role to play. In my own book, I make a similar argument. Of course, my book isn't political, but I argue that religion also has a positive role to play, and furthermore, an essential role to play. So, we have this debate about our society, whether we are in some sort of age of decline or not, and the role that religion plays in that society. Is religion responsible for a current age of darkness, or is religion the key to escaping that age of darkness? That seems to be the question raised by Eric Metaxas and his book. Now, there are other voices in this debate about American decline who really cannot be fit into this debate about the role of religion. I'm thinking of Dr. Peter Whybrow. He's the author of this book right here called American Mania. I absolutely love this book, fantastic book. He also subscribes to the idea that we are in an age of decline, but he doesn't take an issue about religion one way or the other. He doesn't blame religion, but he doesn't give religion any credit either. The issue doesn't come up in his book. He takes a neuroscientific point of view, and in fact, he blames not religion for America's decline, but he blames instead America's dominant consumer culture. So this is an interesting question, and we might want to keep Whybrow's theory of American decline in the back of our minds, and maybe as we discuss Eric Metaxas' book, we might be able to figure out how possibly Whybrow's observations might fit into this debate, this larger debate that we're having about American society and the role that religion plays, for better or for worse. So that's something also to keep in mind as you're reading Eric's book. What is the role of religion in our society? Does it have a positive role to play Is America to be is religion to be blamed for American decline, or is it the key to escaping decline? Is it the key to forward progress? And what about other influences in our culture? Is consumerism keeping us down? What is to blame for America's apparent cultural decline? So this is basically the end of our discussion right here. You'll be able to find this discussion at goodreads.com, at my own website. What is the name of my website? newwalden.org, and also YouTube. And you can leave comments at any of those places. And I encourage you, please feel free to comment on Eric Metaxas' book. Feel free to comment on this video. And my plan is for the next video to include your comments. And our next video will focus on Chapter 1 of If You Can Keep It by Eric Metaxas. And I hope you will join us for that discussion.